Um, so what about the minutes? I think we're gonna need to vote on them, because I don't know when we're gonna get a quorum of people who were there.
Right, it just has to be a quorum of the members present, correct?
Yeah, we don't, it would be nice to just have people who were a quorum of people who were there, but if we don't have that, then we do kind of have to vote on them, and we can, the people who weren't there should have seen the video and should be able to decide on the minutes.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna do that. Let me work on this for a second. All right. I'll be up in a second. I just want to see my attendees list. Of course, I just minimized it. And okay. So, all right, we're gonna start. Let's bring this meeting to order. It's the September 21, 2021 Newburyport Conservation Commission meeting taking place on the Zoom platform. This meeting is being recorded. The first item on the agenda are approval of the meeting minutes, and we have to do the August 17th minutes. And I think we're just gonna have whoever's here vote on that. So do we have any comments or questions on the August 17th minutes?
Make a motion to approve them.
Second.
All right, Paul Healy,
Yes.
Dan Warshall, David Vine,
Yes.
Carol Wagon.
Yes,
I vote yes. All right, on to the September 7th, 2021 minutes. We have any comments or questions, changes?
I had one comment, if nobody else did. Gretchen, let's see, it was under the, now I've got to find out where my, let's see. Now I can't find where it was. Maybe I didn't have an issue with this one. Okay, that's it. If I find it, if I find what I was thinking of, Gretchen, I will email you, but I think this looks okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, anybody else?
Motion to approve.
second,
Paul Healy,
Yes.
Dan Warshall,
Yes,
David Vine.
Did we decide that if you weren't there, you can
Yes,
vote if you saw it? I did see the video, so yes.
Okay, Carol Wagon.
yes,
I vote yes. All right, on to other items. Plum Island updates. Anybody have any questions about Plum Island right now?
what's happening? That's my question.
Well, to start with, just a quick update, there's going to be an MRBA meeting scheduled for, I think I forwarded you the email today, scheduled for October 1st, which is a Friday, a week from Friday, at 10 a.m. It's going to be on Zoom, and they'll send out the Zoom link, and when I get it, I'll send it to you all. And the update is that things are stable out there now, for now, which is good because the dredging project, the Army Corps dredging project, has been put on hold for probably a year because they got one bid, and the one bid was twice their estimated cost. And that happened because essentially they went out to bid too late in the season, and all of the local or typically available dredge contractors were already booked, had already put in proposals for other projects. So the only proposal they got was from someone who would have had to bring up equipment from Florida. They didn't have the right equipment. It was just a bad storm of of events that created that one bid being so overpriced. So they have to start over, unfortunately, and they're going to put it back out to bid in the spring. So hopefully this time next year, we'll be looking at a project taking place, but not until then, which is why the state has moved forward with providing funding for the Coir Bag project. So the state's now providing $400,000 and the city will cover the remaining cost, which I believe is approximately 50,000 additional, more or less. And we've mobilized the contractor, Sumco, and we applied for the DCR access permit, just finished that today. So now DCR has to review the access permit and then we should be able to start mobilizing on site within the next few weeks, I would think. So hopefully that will, provide the protection necessary for the Reservation Terrace area until the dredge can take place next year. And
Well,
we'll
are
talk
the-
about all this more at the MRBA meeting, I would guess.
Could you just tell me whether the utilities were all reconnected?
The utilities were not reconnected that I know of. I know that they turned off the water to the 3 homes that were most in harm's way and they connected, they gave them temporary connections from other parts of the street. So they do have water, but it's not from the original water line, which I believe has still been turned off, but I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that.
It's okay, close enough. Thank you.
Was there some additional emergency work that was done out there? I wasn't quite sure about that.
There was in the moment on that day, when the emergency was taking place and they had the extreme high tide and wave action, they did put some rock in the space between the caved in road and the cement blocks that had sort of tumbled down a little bit. So that was to prevent the water from reaching further underneath the roadway and pulling out the remaining utilities and collapsing the road entirely. So that's part of what helped stabilize the situation 2 weeks ago. And that will be addressed in a final way through the Corps budget.
Okay.
All right. Next, on to informal discussion with Lisa Mead on Hale Street. Lisa, I'm gonna ask you to keep it to less than, I don't know, 7 minutes, so we can get moving.
Okay, I'm going to promote Lisa. Lisa, I'm promoting you a panelist. Annie and Tom Hughes, I will also for you, okay? So they should be over in just a second to begin.
Thank you. I'm going to actually turn it over to Tom. This is the property at the corner of Malcolm Hoyt and Hale Street. And you all issued a order of conditions on the property adjacent to this for a small industrial building a few years ago. It's since been completed and a certificate of compliance issued. And with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Tom. Tom, you're muted. To talk about what we're proposing here.
Okay, good evening. So what you have in front of you is the COC plan, the as-built of the development that you approved. At one time, these are all part of the same parcel. And if we can go to the next sheet. So what you see on the right here, there's a double property line you see. Actually, the left-hand kind of double property line in the middle is the actual left-hand side of that property. You can see there's an upland area in the middle there, kind of like an island, that does connect to the neighbor to the left. And the development, if you look on our lot, you look at the development went in the upland along that, I guess it'd be the western property line. And it's a massive parcel. There's still an area of upland along Hale Street. And then there's a really large, really nice sort of wetland complex that used to be mowed on a regular basis. And there's a stream that runs through it along the eastern property line. if we can go to the next page, what we're interested in approaching the commission about is the idea of doing a small development within that upland area that is along Hale Street. This would require us to get a variance for the percentage of buffer zone if we were to go forward with this. We're prepared to provide a significant public benefit in terms of protection of the remaining portions of the property, including the other upland area that connects to the property to the west and the entire wetland complex. And Lisa could talk to you about some of the options on how we could protect that. But what we would do with this development, the idea is to have it be closer to Hale Street. We would be respecting the 25-foot no disturb, and we would essentially try to have it with parking on sides and in back, and try to have it be kind of emerging from the industrial zone that it's in into the main industrial zone, but also be respectful of the fact that there are residences across the way. And so the design of that, we're talking about trying to make it fairly attractive from the front. And then in terms of what we can do to provide, you know, a public benefit mitigation, I mean, certainly for mitigation, there's a lot of invasive plants along the buffer zone there. But in terms of public benefit, Lisa, do you want to talk about some of those options?
Sure. I want to talk about a couple things. So this building, as you can see, it's a smaller industrial building. It would be closer to the street. It would require also a variance from the zoning board for front yard setback. But obviously, because the wetlands in the back, you can't push it back. If you could go to the middle plan a minute, Julia, just so you can see the whole site. So if you look up at the top right-hand side of this plan right there, that's where this building would go, right there. And so the remainder part of the back area with that kind of circle uplands that go into the adjacent parcel next door, which is not owned by the proponents, and it wasn't part of the original proposal. That's a really cool piece of uplands. The idea was we could put some kind of a conservation restriction on the back part of this. It would, as Tom suggested, in addition to the ecological benefits and the diversity of the wetlands area and the wildlife habitat, would be seen as flood storage, which would occur no matter what. But I think it's important to mention that. And so we could do a conservation restriction. We could deed it over somehow. Be happy to talk about what would be of interest to the commission on that, which would prevent any owner of it from selling it to the adjacent parcel next door, so they could actually use it for lot area for their property. So we're here because we're interested in what the commission thinks about this. It's a significant parcel of land. I can't remember, Tom, do I want to say it's 5 acres? 8
I think
acres?
it's bigger. I want to say 8 acres.
8 acres of land. And we're looking to use the very front part of it where there is that upland, and then try to do some kind of public benefit for the rest of it.
Okay. When the previous development happened, so we were talking about the coverage, the percentage coverage
Right.
in there.
Yes.
Correct.
Weren't we right up against the maximum with that other project?
20%. So yeah, just to be clear, you're right, Joe. The reason why they would need a variance for this is because they would be disturbing greater than 20% of the existing buffer zone on the site.
Of the
Which
full
is
lot, right?
Of the full lot.
The original lot, correct.
Yeah, I guess what if we let it go through, can you develop? You can't even develop the rest of the lot, can you?
Well, the upland in the back. See that the upland right there. that could be sold to the neighbor. That neighbor, if they sold a portion of the property in the back to the neighbor would be able to use it for lot area for their property and could use the upland.
Okay, not, I'm seeing 25 foot, that seems pretty small, but
Because here's the, you're
It,
right, here.
it is very pretty and it seems small, but you've got to keep in mind, you're looking at a large parcel of land, right? So if that overall original lot, I think was 8 acres, you know, we're probably talking 3/4 of an acre of upland right there. It's a pretty significant thing. The other thing is the geometry of this lot. You know, when the regulations were adopted and looked to limit disturbance to 20% of the buffer, you know, on a lot with an even wetland line that kind of cuts through it, you know, with a sort of a more classic, all the upland in one place, all the wetland in one place. This one is kind of upland perimeter with a wetland core. And what it does is it essentially, and yet we've got a little bit of a corner of the lot that is not of the original lot, which is the northwestern corner, is not in the buffer zone. If it were in the buffer zone, the ordinance and the way that we've been doing this section of the regs would provide flexibility without the need for a variance. The fact that we have like a small corner up in that northwest corner didn't allow us to get that flexibility. And I think at the original development, we were, you know, when we did that building, we talked to the commission about far more limited sort of mitigative measures. I think we were talking about doing some invasive control. In this case, I think we're talking about far more substantial public benefit. It is a really beautiful piece of wetland area in there. It's, you know, got a nice floodplain shelf associated with that brook that runs through there. And it's got a really nice upland area in that area that we're pointing to, that's kind of out in the middle, that all could be protected and preserved for the greater public benefit. And it would, you know, so that's the kind of thing we're looking to talk to the commission about, is, you know, could we come up with, working with the commission, come up with something to do with the rest of that land that would, you know, provide a public benefit, and then get the variance for the 20%, which is, you know, keep in mind, that's just in the regulations. That's not an ordinance standard. It's still a regulatory standard we have to meet, but it is one that is subject to change by vote of the commission. So, you know, if it weren't granted now, and if we didn't deed the land over, you know, conceivably a future commission could change the regulations, and the entire site upland area could be developed. Other than the 25%, you know, 25 foot.
yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know if a future commission would do that, but.
Well, no, I don't know if they
Yeah,
would or
right.
not.
And
we're
you're already
talking about it.
proposing developing it, so.
Yeah,
Right.
but what we're saying is we would essentially provide protection to that upland area that's in the back, as well as to the wetland area that's there. And that would be something that would be in perpetuity, and would not be something that would be, you know, subject to any particular change with regulation.
Yeah, well,
How big is that, that back upland area, just more or less in feet? I mean, what I
Well,
can't-
Tom thinks it's about 3/4 of an acre, I think he just said.
Yeah, that's my guess. It's the entire thing is 8 acres, and if you picture that, it looks to be about 1/10 of the entire area of the lot.
Okay, so it might be 150 by 200 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it is sizable. When you go out there, I mean, it would actually be a beautiful place to just sit down at a picnic table or at a gazebo and just kind of hang out. There's not you know, the easiest way to get there is through the part of the land that was already developed. You can get there from the the back side, but if you can zoom in, the back property line, the southern property line is kind of funky. The frontage is on the eastern end of it.
You're looking at.
I don't know if you-
So, I mean, I guess what they're trying to convey is that they believe preserving this upland within the wetland is, provides a public benefit, provides an important conservation benefit and value, because if not preserved, this property, the adjacent already developed property, could someday acquire it from the neighbor and come into here and use it as part of their development. Again, there is a buffer, but the 25-foot no disturb is back here. It still does give them some use of the upland, in which case you lose that benefit of the habitat up versus wet.
Okay.
And a portion of that upland area is actually out of the buffer zone entirely. I believe.
Right.
Yeah, not much.
No, but it is, but it would be protected under what we're proposing.
Who owns the property now?
It's a realty trust, Craig Pacina, a realty trust.
Oh, I see. Okay. And
But-
they own all of the property except for where that building's located?
Yeah, so just to be clear, this was the original proposal, Carol. This is before you were on the commission.
Yeah.
So the building that's shown on here is owned entirely by a third party. There was a segment up front, which we can go back to in a minute, where the upland is right in the middle of the property towards Hale Street. That there's a commercial building built there right now, an industrial building that's owned by a condominium association. Now that's been all sold and owned by a commercial condominium association. So that's this building right here. And so if everything around that, all the way back to the back of the corner, back to Malcolm Hoyt, now is owned by this realty trust that we're in front of you for. So, so it's a pretty significant parcel still remaining.
Yeah, I think I'd need a plan like this with the building that's already built and
Yeah.
a few the wetlands. in a
Right.
different color. I'm having trouble yeah, like big expanded version of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I get,
Some concept of what's going on.
Yeah.
So
Now,
that's-
if there were a picnic table on that uplands, how would people access that picnic table?
I think through the back, Paul, we'd have to look at that, and we can kind of mark it out so you could see how it could be accessed for
Oh,
sure.
okay.
But I guess the question is, before we go into a lot more expense here, which I think is worth it, because I think that I hear what you're saying. You'd like to see this, how it fits all. I'd like to get, so I kind of hear Joe and I kind of hear Carol and Paul. Are, Dan and David, are you both of the same opinion? You'd like to see a little bit more to understand a little bit how it all fits together. I think, it's an upland piece that would be good tax revenue for the city. It's not a giant, obviously can't hold a giant industrial building. It's not as big as the one next door. It's a smaller industrial building. It's a nice segue as you move down, transition down Hale Street, and would kind of border that corner of Malcolm Hoyt there, and then everything behind it would be open. So, before we go to that next step and kind of put a little bit more on here, I'd like to hear a little more feedback, maybe from Dan and David about that.
Well, I'd just say that I definitely haven't seen enough here to have any sense of it. I mean, we received this afternoon. It's kind of disjointed as far as what we're really looking at. So I don't really have an opinion at this point.
That's fair, I think, for sure. Dan?
It doesn't sound to me like the threat of development of the back upland piece is it's I don't know. I don't think there's too much concern. I'm more concerned about, offering a variance to develop more than 20% of the buffer zone in this case, in order to save something that I don't think is really under any threat. So I don't really see the public benefit part of it as being a very plausible argument.
Yeah, I would, at this point, I agree with that, but I need to have, more cohesive information to go over.
Yeah.
I'm
So
willing
I
to
think-
listen. I'm willing to listen to more, but I at minimum would want to see much more detailed plan, and also would have to go take a peek, but it's.
Yeah. So let us talk to the client about that. I will say, Tom mentioned your 20% rule, which I think you guys all hold on to very carefully here, and it has certainly provided some protections. And I suspect that you want to continue to hold on to that. And so, I'd like to, we'll take a look at that, and we'll take a look at what we have here. But it might behoove everybody to be a little flexible and to see if there's a benefit to the commission on preserving that back upland and the rest of the wetlands area and the wildlife habitat that it protects.
Okay, well, we can get some more info. We can have a little more of a discussion, informal discussion on that.
And
Okay,
maybe
that's great.
more about the access to this as well.
It's the access, you mean to the back part or to this?
Yeah,
parcel?
to the back part. So
Okay,
that the
yeah,
public can
definitely, David.
enjoy
Got
this.
Great.
For sure. Okay,
Okay,
thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
all right, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you. All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, next item, we're gonna go on to the DCR flowering pond update.
Yes, okay, so for this one, I'm going to Derek Schipper, going to promote to panelist, and Tracy Tarr as well. So they should be able to come over and see everybody and unmute themselves. And let's move to the amphibian protection plan. So Derek and Tracy, you can just let me know how you want me to scroll through this. And you can just give the commission a quick summary of the proposed monitoring plan.
Sure, Julia, this is, oh, Derek, if you're gonna start us off, I'll be quiet.
I'll just give a very brief introduction and I'll let you talk, because you're the one who knows what you're talking about. But thank you very much. We received an order of conditions for this project back in May of 2020. The project was delayed. In short, the pond will be drawn down in order to safely perform the work. However, condition 43 of the order required that if the pond is not restored by November 1st, that we have a plan in place for an amphibian protection. And so GZA has gone forth and developed this, and it's been prepared by Tracy. And I think at this point, so the project is moving forward. It's being bid on now. And there's a site meeting tomorrow, pre-bid site meeting. So it is moving forward. So I'll let Tracy take it from here, really.
Thanks so much. Julian, if you don't mind going to page
Sure.
14 of that PDF. that would
Sure.
be the plan.
Yeah.
Great. Hopefully everybody can see that. So we did go out, and given that GZA's engineering team were the primary people on site, I went out to the site in early September to get a sense of the pond and document amphibians that were at the site. No surprise, the pond is certainly well populated by green frog and painted turtle, and of course, likely other species that breed in ponds and then emigrate to adjacent uplands. So we took that into account in our plan. And we assume that during construction after November 1st, we could encounter tadpoles as well as adult frogs. Green frogs and bullfrogs take 2 to sometimes 3 years for bullfrogs to overwinter. So they're actually in the tadpole stage for multiple years. So I was glad to see you required a plan, because if we didn't plan for that, we could have a bunch of stranded tadpoles. So we certainly wouldn't want that. So what we did was Derek identified the area of remaining water in the pond. which is at elevation 13. So looking at the top of this figure, it's that yellow blob where during the complete construction, we expect exactly water 3 feet to start within that area. And then as the lower area of the dam is finished, we'll get water up to elevation 15, right, Derek? I believe I got that.
It'll be at elevation 13 for a relatively short amount of time. As soon as we can start bringing the pond back up to establish more of the pond, we will. But yeah, well, it should be back up to 15 within a short time.
Yeah, and so that makes me happy because then we'll have over 24,000 square feet of water suitable to hold amphibians and reptiles that are overwintering in the pond. And so our plan is during dewatering, which is expected to take upwards of about a week with no more than roughly a 2-foot drop each day, a GZA wildlife biologist would be on site each of those dewatering days to relocate animals that are in lowering water and in mud. And of course, we preferentially select and dip net out animals that are truly amphibious, your tadpoles, make sure those are in water and make sure animals are getting into that primary, what we call holding area. Knowing things can sometimes happen, excuse me, not as we expect. We're using a belts and suspenders kind of approach where we've identified 2 other possible holding locations if the first one doesn't meet our needs. And by that, I mean, if we see more freezing than we expect, or the stocking is just too much to be considered safe, we have 2 other possible locations. So there's a possible secondary relocation area on the bottom of the plan. And we don't really expect to need to use this, but if we needed it, it would be shored up with sandbags and be a secondary location to place animals. And then if for some reason, both of those 2 say freeze, we have a tertiary area in uplands where we'd set up a 500 to 1,000 gallon stock tank. And again, this would only be last resort, but we can use submersible pumps and heaters if necessary to prevent freezing as the last suspenders, but I really don't think it'll get to that, knowing that we have roughly 25,000 square feet in our primary area. And I guess I'll slow down, see if anybody has any questions. We have specific parameters in the plan as how we hold animals and get them to the right temperature. Amphibians in the winter really significantly reduce their food, so we don't expect to need to feed them, but we'd opportunistically move macroinvertebrates and algae covered logs into that primary relocation area so that, let's say it was an unseasonably warm November, those would be feeding surfaces for the tadpoles.
And how deep is the primary relocation area?
At its shallowest, it's 3 feet, and then as it gets raised, it's upwards of 5 feet, which is great, right? Because we know we need roughly 4 feet to prevent freezing, typically.
Okay.
Yeah.
How physically, how does this relocation occur? I'm having a hard time visualizing what you'd actually be doing out there.
Yeah, so we'll have a staff biologist. You're literally in hip waders with a dip net, and you're using buckets, water-filled buckets, and you move the tadpoles and the adult frogs into the buckets and then walk them over to that relocation area and put them in. And I've found from relocating animals, the one thing we have to do is be sensitive about separating out different size frogs. Adult frogs are highly predatory. A big frog will eat a medium frog in a split second. So we'll have multiple buckets to keep everybody separate until nature takes over in the pond. And then of course, we're going to document everything we're seeing. And then in our plan, we have us preparing a report within 30 days of construction so that you'll have a total of animals that we relocated and the species that were relocated and the measures we had to use.
And what kind of numbers of animals are you expecting? Any idea?
It could be thousands when you consider tadpoles. The green frogs were a little underpopulated compared to what I expected in early September, but they could have just been deeper in the water. So it could be thousands.
Okay.
I don't
Will
recall.
you be only getting the ones that are in the dry? I mean, that's how you would oversee this as far as
Well, then-
selecting.
Yeah, the good thing about this is just the way that it's drawn down. It's drawn down to our holding area. So animals are naturally gonna, if they're in the water column, they're gonna flow towards that pond. And then we're walking along to make sure they're not getting stuck in the mud.
And when do you expect this to all happen?
Yeah, I'll turn it over to Derek on the schedule.
So the project will be bid on within bids are due September 29th. And we're hoping that by the end of October, we can have a contractor on site.
Derek, how long is the project expected to take, construction wise?
Couple of months, couple to 3 months. We're unfortunately going to be in the winter season, so we could have some bad weather that might delay that some, but barring any significantly bad weather, it could be like a 6-week project or so.
Wasn't this project originally supposed to start in the fall?
The hope was initially to go in the summer of 2020, but that didn't happen for a variety of reasons. So the intent is to start soon.
We got any more questions?
This is the only thing that would be impacted by the change in the season, as far as doing your work at a different time of the season?
That's right.
Okay. Julie, do we need to vote on this plan?
Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea to vote on it. But before you do, I just had one question, and it's just a thought that came into my head, which is this is really interesting what you'd be doing, relocating all of these critters into these holding areas during construction. And it's obviously a very heavily used park, and it might be interesting to provide some public information about this, or at least be prepared for how to address it when people come by and ask what's going on. I don't know if you've thought about any of that part of it, or maybe your holding areas aren't in a location over there where there are any of the public pathways.
It's going to be an active construction site. I don't think it'd be a good idea to have folks coming down there. I'm not aware of any trails that come in. Well, there is one on, yeah, but then it's a steep slope to get down there.
Yeah, it's a pretty steep slope. Yeah, it's a good point. And it'll be winter. I don't think you're gonna have too many curious visitors.
But I think we'd be more than happy if any curious folks come by and want to have a look and know what we're up to. We'd be happy to share that with them.
Okay.
Okay.
We got anything else? I think we need to get a motion to approve this.
Motion to approve this plan.
Second,
Paul Healy,
Yes.
Dan Warshall,
yes.
David Vine,
Yes.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. On to certificates of compliance, request determination, and et cetera, et cetera. First item is John Marcheter. I know I butchered that. 10 Harbor Street, request for determination.
Yeah, I don't see
I do not
anyone
see.
here, which is odd. But at the same time, as I mentioned in my notes to you all, I had requested, he had originally submitted a proposal to use sonotubes, concrete filled sonotubes, and I sent him back to the drawing board noting that those aren't allowed on Plum Island. He was going to come back with a revised plan showing the use of concrete blocks that he was going to cement together to make them more stable so that he could get the elevation because it needed to be 2 feet above grade because it's in the V zone. And he had sent me an email asking for my thoughts on a solution that he came up with. And that was, I said it sounded good to me. That was the last I heard from him. So it could be that he's working on revising the plan still. But it just didn't let me know he wasn't going to be here tonight. So I apologize about that. Might want to continue.
Okay, all right. We want to
Motion to
continue?
continue.
Second,
All right, yeah, we'll vote on this. Paul Healy,
yes.
Dan Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes,
Carol Wagon.
Yes,
I vote yes.
By the way, Julia, in your notes on this project, you referred to this structure as a garage, whereas in the RFD, it was a shed.
Oh. Sorry, that might be my fault. It is a shed. I don't know
Yeah.
that it is used as a garage. You're right, because he has to have it elevated. It's not big enough. Sorry about that.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but so there's no plan to turn it into a garage?
No. It was,
Okay.
yeah, it came through in his application as a shed, I believe, which we have right here.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
that is what he indicated.
I mean,
Yeah, shed.
that's what it certainly
Shed,
looks
Yep.
like.
okay. All right.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's just me.
Okay, all right, we're continued to, that's going to the first
Fifth.
meeting in October.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, October 5th, yep. All right, all right, can I get a motion of public hearings?
so moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye,
Aye.
aye.
opposed? Okay. And our one item to Spofford Street has asked for a continuance. So,
October 5th.
You to October 5th.
okay. Can I get a second? Okay, you got a second. Paul Healy,
Yes,
Dan Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes,
Carol Wagon,
Yes,
and I vote yes. All right, get a motion to close the public hearings.
so moved.
second.
All in favor? Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
opposed? Okay. Next item is enforcements and violations, 3Q Street.
Yeah, I put this under, and it wasn't under enforcement at the last meeting. There was an order of conditions issued for this, obviously. But I moved it to enforcement because of the violations on the site or the work they did without permitting. And we had requested from them some plans, some revised plans, a revised appraisal, as well as landscape plans showing what they had done. And they acknowledged receipt of the request, but I have not received anything from them in response. So no more work has been done on the site with regard to the garage. But it might be beneficial since we have not heard. I will certainly email them and ask them when they plan to submit these plans, but it might be worthwhile to give them a deadline, because we know how some of the times these things just go on and on and on.
We should give them a deadline of October 5th, I think. I don't think we need to, you know, they should have been working on it for minimum 2 weeks already. So they would have had a month.
Yeah, they should at least show up to tell us
Yeah.
where they are or something.
yeah.
And I don't know what kind of a vote we do short of a notice of violation, but you may want to tell them that we will issue that notice if we do not get the information by October 5th.
I think that sounds good.
And we know for a fact that there's no work being done out there.
Well, there's no work being done on the garage because they don't have a building permit. So, and they took it down, and I know they want to rebuild it, but they can't yet because they don't have any permits. So that's where things stand, but the work on the house was already complete. Landscaping was already complete. So, for the most part, complete. So they didn't need to do anything else on that. So they're really just stuck with the garage issue, which is one of the reasons why I think giving them a time frame is important, because otherwise this could conceivably be one of those things that just goes on forever with an old garage foundation sitting out there.
And you know, they need to get us all the information on the house and the landscaping, and they should have until October 5th, or we issue a notice of violation, and then we got to move forward with fines. And not that we've done it before, but I think this is an issue where we need to consider it.
Would there be something in whatever's being conveyed to them now about the next meeting, about that the fines would ensue after, at what point that would happen, so that they know, or do you think they already know?
Well,
Well,
you have to issue a notice of violation first.
Yeah,
Okay.
I could make it clear the process that would
I
follow,
think that
which
would be a good idea.
Yeah, I can do that for sure.
Julia, I'd suggest that if the rest of the commission agrees that it might be worthwhile to reiterate in your notification to them that the issue is not necessarily the demolition of the garage, but it's the non-conforming aspects of the landscape in the house that are really what we're concerned about.
Yes.
My recollection from their presentation was that they were very much focused on the issue of the garage and were a bit cavalier about the issues that appear to be more than insignificant with regard to the house and the landscape.
Right.
Yes, well said. I will do that.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know that we have much else. That's the end of our agenda. Unless we have anything else we need to discuss in old business.
I don't have anything else in old business that I can think of right now, other than to update you all a little bit more on the open space management contract, which we are working on finalizing with Woodsman Inc. I think we mentioned that at the last meeting. That was approved by the mayor's office, and we're just getting it down to the details of getting them started, which is exciting.
Very good.
Yep.
And one of the things that, after listening to the last meeting, one of my concerns was we were going to get into this assessment again on the 50% and so forth. And we were kicking around some ideas previously about bringing in maybe an assessor as a consultant to kind of see where we stand as far as the 50% rule. And I don't know if Julie, if you've made any progress on that.
I sent you an email with, I did get a name from Jordy of an appraiser that he's used before, the city's used before, that he feels very comfortable with, has a good relationship with, and trusts. And that is somebody who we could contact for a peer review of any future appraisals that come in that the commission thinks warrant a peer review. So we have that sort of in our pocket. We need to wait and see what happens with this Q Street. We've requested a revised appraisal from them. So it may be something that we want to do in this case, is that peer review. And I talked with Andy Port about it. He's, thinks that that's completely valid and something that we could move forward with.
Yeah, I mean, I might want to say I'd probably like to see an extension, not so much what's coming next, but what we have in place and how our, I mean, we have a pretty good budget. I mean, is this something where we could bring in a consultant for an hour or two and just get some sense of where we stand?
That you mean to sort of like review what we have in our regs and give us some
Sure.
feedback on how to handle that?
Yeah, it seemed to be such a variation between the two methods that
Yeah.
made me kind of wonder, maybe this last project that we had, maybe they were absolutely right, and that's exactly the way our regs read, and you know, prepare ourselves for the future where this will be happening more and more. And then make a decision whether we want to go that route.
Yeah, it's a
Wasn't
good
there also-
idea.
Wasn't there also some talk about changing the language so that it would also deal with cumulative changes so that it's,
Right.
which I think we don't have now, right? There's nothing
Right.
about that. It's case by case, but if you have the same piece of property and, you know, however many years later, then now it's a different story. There should be something to,
Yeah, that's a bigger discussion. That's a more substantive discussion that I think also would need to involve the planning and zoning, or at least zoning. I think a peer review of our of appraisals and just looking at our regs related to significant improvement is one thing, but when you get into whether or not it should be cumulative or not cumulative, that's that opens up a whole new bag of worms, because then you're talking about potentially different property owners, different projects taking place years apart from each other, and what's you know, what's reasonable to, how is it reasonable to require or restrict a homeowner's right to improve their structure? You know what I mean?
Yeah. come
So I
back
just
5
think
years
that's going to be a
later to-
tricky discussion.
well,
Yeah.
but even if it's the same owner,
Mhm.
couldn't there also be an issue if they came in front of us, you know, now, and then 5 years from now, they're like, oh, kind of like this guy on Q Street, right? Like, I did all this and we did it right onto the wire, but as it turns out, they did a lot more. And if they would have come back
Yeah.
for that additional work, would that have even been covered? It
Well,
was
we
just
have,
a-
yeah, I think there could, we should talk about a time window in which that would be looked at cumulatively. And right now, unofficially, I ask people for within, if it's the same property owner, and the same property, obviously, with, and two construction permits within the same year, then I say, that to me looks like you're segmenting a bigger project to try to get under the 50% rule. So I've been just sort of asking if that has ever happened, which has happened once or twice. I've said to the applicant, we're gonna want to look at both of these projects as one. But that's me unofficially requesting that from the applicant. It's something that we could maybe put in the regs, but beyond it being the same applicant and the same you know, property owner, whatever, within 5 years, I don't know. Is that really segmentation, or is that just two separate projects? It's hard to make those calls. I think that's why we would need to talk with council. We would need to talk with zoning, and it's something that everyone would need to be on the same page about.
Right, and it'd be interesting to see whether any other communities have something similar, a rule that's similar, because I think that would bolster our argument for something, for the change. So I don't know if you have some way to find out.
Well, unfortunately, I would be shocked and amazed if there was any other community that had anything even remotely like this.
Oh, really?
Because
Okay.
our Plum Island regulations are one of a kind. I mean, this is something that you don't see really anywhere else that I'm aware of. Maybe, I mean, it's possible that there's some places on the Cape that might have something like this. I can take a look, but as far as I've ever known, our Plum Island regulations are very unique.
Yeah, they were based on the water and
DEP.
sewer project, and
Yeah.
and Paul, DEP wrote a lot of those
They did.
regulations, right? Yeah.
And I
They
know
required
that
them.
when all those discussions were going on, cumulative effects were very big with them. They did not like cumulative effects,
Okay,
which is essentially what this is. you know.
yeah. Well, that's interesting.
So, yeah, maybe,
It,
I-
you know,
you know,
it could be in the final stages, the lawyers got rid of that, but
Mhm.
yeah, well, we should, Compliment and Page should know, or what are they, KPA?
yeah.
Yeah,
Solicitor they should have some sort of grasp of all that, but yeah, we can't let people segment projects like that.
Mhm.
And
It would be helpful to have something in the regs that would call
Yeah.
that out, even if in a very limited window, because right now we just don't have anything. They could come in, 6 months later with a brand new project that doubles the impact or doubles the improvement value, and we wouldn't be able to legally say anything about it. So it definitely is worth the discussion. I believe that's in, not the regs though, I believe that's part of the ordinance.
I think it was, yeah.
And so that's something that has to be passed by the city council. So that's a bigger animal. But still worth the discussion, for sure.
Yeah.
So what we could do is have an agenda. And next time there's a really light agenda, maybe ahead of time, I can send out a list of potential ordinance regulation changes to everybody.
mhm.
And you could all kind of comment and say which ones you think are priorities to talk about. And then we could put a few of them on the agenda for an upcoming meeting.
Yeah.
That's like a plan.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna make a list because there are some also just some minor like little technicalities that probably should be fixed.
Yeah, and we would need to advertise all those too.
Yeah.
And strategically, we have a new city council coming in
Mhm.
soon, right? So,
As well as a new mayor.
yeah,
Mhm.
the election results yet? No, it's too early.
Close.
Yep, we're almost done. 18 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
I spent 11 and a half hours at the Ward 2 polling station.
Oh,
And they had about 550 votes for Ward 2. So we should get well over 600. Should be good. More the merrier.
yeah.
All right. Do we have anything else now? All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Second,
All in favor? Aye.
Hi.
aye,
Opposed? All right. Good night, everybody.
Night.
good night, thank you.